Headlines on the India development debate. Big trouble for PNB as the central bank says the state-run bank will have to shoulder the entire burden of the 11,300 crore rupees scam. Sources tell Economic Times that RBI is keen to limit the damage to PNB alone to make it sure that it doesn't trigger a crisis in the banking system as a whole. The battle over the damages begins. PNB says it will honour only the bona fide claims, even as the peer banks like Axis and Allahabad Bank assert that the buck stops with PNB. PNB MD Sunil Mehta clarifies that the man at the centre of the controversy, Nirav Modi, has not come up with a repayment plan just yet. The Enforcement Directorate swings into action, conducts nationwide raids across the Nirav Modi offices and residence, even as it files a money laundering case against the international diamond merchant. Sources tell your channel that ED is suspecting money laundering by Nirav Modi during demonetization days. A big political battle erupts over the big bank loot. Main opposition party Congress charges the Modi government of helping errant promoters run away with public money. BJP hits back. Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says the scam is a result of the UPA government's flawed policies. The man in the muddle, Nirav Modi, may have fled the country on the 1st of January, days before the CBI received a complaint from PNB about a 280 crore rupee fraud. Meanwhile, CBI sources say they've issued a lookout notice against Modi and his three of his associates, including his business partner Mehul Choksi, the promoter of Geetanjali Gems. Good evening, it's 9 p.m. This is the India Development Debate. I'm Sandeep Gurumurthy joining you live from our news centre in Delhi. Looks like the big bank loot is way bigger than what we thought. A day after the country's second largest public sector bank, PNB, said they had detected an 11,300 crore rupees scam involving diamond trader Nirav Modi and his associates. Skeletons are tumbling out of the cupboard. Top investigative agencies like the ED and CBI have swung into action, conducting raids at Nirav Modi's residence and offices across the country. The central bank on its part has made it clear that PNB will have to pick up the entire tab and make good the losses of its peer bank. Sources tell us that RBI is keen to contain the damage and limit it to PNB and PNB alone. Meanwhile, a massive political battle has broken out over the biggest bank scam in India, with the Congress accusing the government of helping fraudulent businessmen run away with public money. The BJP has hit back, holding the previous UPA government squarely responsible for the mega fraud. The man in the muddle who made it to the Forbes list of billionaires from India, the biggest loot in India's banking history, and what it means to the financial markets, the economy at large. That's a topic of discussion tonight on the India Development Debate. And joining us on the show this evening is a power-packed panel. Meera Sanyal, former CEO of Royal Bank of Scotland, India branch; Hemendra Hazari, banking expert; Prashant Bhushan, lawyer, activist and politician; Hitesh Jain, representing the BJP party, he's a lawyer himself; and Priyanka Chaturvedi, a spokesperson of the Congress party. Thank you all so much for joining us on what promises to be a power-packed and gripping edition of the India Development Debate. But let me start off with you, Meera Sanyal, before I take it to the politicians on the panel. Do you find it perplexing that this has been going on undetected for 7 years?
Yes, in fact, it is an extremely strange situation. I mean, it's quite clear how the 280 crore fraud took place, but how this has amounted to 11,000 crores and gone undetected is something which is a bit of a mystery, and I'm certainly hoping to get more details to understand the train of events which has led to such a large amount being undetected in the balance sheet of the Punjab National Bank over 7 years and not being caught either by the first line of defense, which is the operational risk team of the bank, or the internal audit team of the bank, or the external auditors of PNB, or even the Reserve Bank of India, which regularly audits every bank. So it's a bit of a mystery.
It is a bit of a mystery. Coming on that, Hemendra Hazari, are you as perplexed as everyone else is? Is it just a fraud done by a few employees and something that exposes the incompetence of checks and balances in our banking system? Or do you think there's more to it than what meets the eye?
See, it is possible that there's more to it that meets the eye, because even on the counterparty banks, you see, they have been discounting these letters of comfort now for a couple of years, it would appear. And when there is a letter of comfort, you have to see what are you discounting. There has to be movement of goods. There have to be shipping documents. They should have been asking that from, Nirav Modi. But it seems that nobody was asking any questions, and everybody here was doing blind banking. And this is what I find rather strange, because in this case, it is not just PNB where very clearly the ultimate, liability rests, but what were all these other banks doing abroad? See, how are they doing banking? They're just using a letter of comfort and they're giving out funds. I mean, they're not asking for any documents or shipment of goods, because obviously they're giving finance for shipment of some, economic activity. And the most fundamental thing in banking is that you must know what you're lending for. So here it seems nobody was asking questions. Everyone was taking comfort in this swift message which is certifying, a comfort letter, and that was about it. And this is what I find, most alarming, because from a regulatory point of view, any letter of comfort of over $20 million for a non-capital goods has to be reported to the RBI. And there has to be on-site audits done. There has to be, basic accounting reconciliation, which is the very basic banking, has not been done in this branch of PNB. Now, this is what, all bankers are totally shocked by. That this is not a complex fraud from what we know. It's a very simple fraud which could have been easily detected if you'd done, a daily balancing of your books.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we will talk about that. Viewers should not get confused with these jargons that are getting thrown of SWIFT and, and CBS and whatnot. It's pretty simple. It's pretty common sense. And like Hemendra Zari pointed out, there is no excuse for this to have happened in the first place. But Prashant Bhushan, a lot of effort is being made to make it appear as if this is a scam perpetrated by a few officials of PNB, junior level officials, may I say, junior level officials of PNB. And at best, it exposes the lack of, risk mechanism or checks and balance in the banking system. Do you buy that argument? Do you believe that this could have happened without political patronage?
Well, if it has happened without political patronage and without the complicity of senior officials of PNB as well as other banks who discounted these letters of understanding, then it shows that our whole banking system is functioning at the mercy of God, which means that there is no regulation, nothing. If this kind of 11,000 crore fraud can be done by two low officials or middle level or junior level officials of Punjab National Bank without anybody at the top knowing about it, then heaven help our whole banking system, its regulatory regime, etc. But I don't think that is likely to be the case, because if this kind of thing can happen in Punjab National Bank, then obviously it can happen in various other banks, and this would have been rampant across the country. What it appears is that there has been complicity at high levels, and there has been apparently, it appears, a kind of political signal to these banks to allow this to go on, because otherwise it is very, very unlikely, and that is substantiated also by the fact that Mr. Modi feted this man, this Nirav Modi at Davos around the same time that these amounts were due. According to the CBI FIR, these 280 crores at any rate was lent out in 2017, in February 2017.
Right.
The amounts were due on 25th January 2018, and Mr. Modi has himself photographed with him as in the CEO's delegation just around that time.
Fair enough. Okay.
Or 23rd or 20th.
Okay, I get that point. Prashant Bhushan, I get that point. Let me get a word in from BJP. And in defense of the government, it's not the fact that he was part of a CEO delegation, which one would argue was not handpicked by the Prime Minister's office. That's not as much. I don't have such a big problem with that as I have with the fact that a whistleblower wrote a letter in July 2016 to the Prime Minister's office complaining of what seemed like a scam and fraud being perpetrated by one of Nirav Modi's aides or allies or business partners, call him what you want, which is Mehul Choksi. It was brought to the notice of government in July 2016. The Prime Minister's office, we are told, referred it to the Registrar of Companies, and yet no action was taken. What explains that, Hitesh Jain?
Okay, apart from that, there is also one very important fact which we are overlooking. On 19th March 2013, on the floor of the House, the then Minister of State for Finance, he responded to the question of one of the MPs as to what are the numbers of fraud and what is the volume of the fraud. At that time in 2013, he responded that 13,000 cases of fraud have been detected in the PSU bank, running into close to 80 to 90,000 crore of fraud. So the question that begets is, from when an MP is raising an issue from 2012, 2013, the Minister of State on the floor of the Finance on the floor of the House agrees that there are 13,000 cases in writing, and he has written as fraud cases. What has been done from 2011 to 2013? Now, these are the transactions with Nirav Modi dating back to 2011 and 2013. In fact, what has happened since 2014, when Mr. Modi has come, he has focused on the NPS scam. He has been speaking continuously about the NPS scam. He also spoke other day in the parliament about how they were.
I understand that it suits you to target the UPA over the NPA mess. I understand that, but let's not play political games. I'm asking you a straight question. Why was no action taken based on the letter written by the whistleblower?
I will answer your straight answer. After the vessel letter was written over, it was handed over to ROC and all. But thereafter, subsequently also action has taken. How has the FIR come to the light? The FIR has come to the light because when Mr. Nirav Modi was told as per the regulations that you have to deposit the margin money, he refused to do that, and that's when the tighter norms were placed, then this whole irregularity was found. Only when the tighter norms and regulations were faced, on 29th January an FIR was filed, on 31st itself the action and everything were taken. Raids have been taken, and today close to 6,000 crore of rupees worth goods worth 6,000 crore worth have been seized in a single day. So this is the action taken from 29th January to the 18th February, 15th February. That is what you are seeing currently in the matter.
Okay, fair enough. Priyanka Chaturvedi, I'm going to let you counter the points made there by Hitesh Jain. It's only fair you get a word. But I want to add, what I don't expect from the Congress party today is to preach on, on corporate governance, is to preach on how NPA is a creation of the NDA, because no one in this panel is going to buy that. But Priyanka, only fair that you rebut Hitesh Jain.
No, I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised that you are telling me about what not to preach and what not to say when you give them a totally free rein to come forward with all their lies, because the defense of the Bharatiya Janata Party spokesperson is as fraudulent as the LOUs that were issued by the Allahabad by the PNB officials in connivance with Mr. Nirav Modi. And I'll tell you why this is a fraudulent defense, because this entire red herring of it was going on since 2011 is a lie. If you go by the CBI FIR, it categorically states that this entire transaction started in 2017. There are SWIFT messages that are recorded from 2017 onwards, which have gone on, and there are some eight such fraudulent messages, all under the tenure of Mr. Narendra Modi. So that is point number one. And the second point is, this man was absolutely invited by the Finance Ministry amongst the top 100 businessmen that were to be showcased at the World Economics Forum in Davos. And I have the Finance Minister's press release.
Do you have a single letter to prove your claim?
No, let her complete. Hitesh Jain, let her complete. Hitesh Jain, let her complete.
Yes, I have it. Yes, I have it.
Yes.
I have it. I did not interfere when you were coming up with your
Hitesh Jain, let her
fraudulent
complete.
nonsense.
Let her complete. Let her complete.
I did not interfere when you were coming up with your fraudulent defense.
Make your
now,
point.
point number three. Now, point number three. No, I'm very surprised that everything about Congress has to be quickened up as a defense, as an attack, but they have a free rein to interject, to speak what they want, and no ifs and buts are given.
I'm not letting him interrupt. Please go on and make your point. Hitesh Jain, let her complete her point.
You are allowing him to do that. You are.
No, I am not. I'm interrupting. I am not allowing him to interrupt you. Please complete your point.
Two particular points, and the third point. And the third point is about the whistleblower. And before this whistleblower's letter, which showed 42 FIRs registered against Mehul Choksi going unattended by the PMO, while it was acknowledged that this letter has been received, nothing was done about it. And the third thing I would want to mention to you, in 2015, Nirav Modi was asked to pay by DRI a penalty amount because of some fraudulent transactions in the import of diamonds that he was involved in. How come none of the government agencies were alerted? How come none of the government agencies were watching what was happening, and all this fraud was allowed to happen, and then this man is allowed to flee out of the country just like Lalit Modi, just like Vijay Mallya, and they just get away with crimes like these, and there's no way of ensuring that all the amounts that they have taken away will be brought back into the banks. And what we will get, what the Aam Aadmi will get, will be an FRDI bill which will have checks and balances for the common investor, but these kind of fraudulent transactions will get away. That is my point as far as the BJP is concerned.
Hitesh, I'm going to come to you, but I need to get a word in from my other panelists as well. I'll let you come in on that. And she's asked a very valid question on how did he get away, and this is sort of happening again and again, but I'll let you respond to that in just a bit. But let me take this back to Meera Sanyal, and again, I don't claim to be an expert in banking, Meera Sanyal, but is it not common sense that there should have been a reconciliation mechanism between the SWIFT system and the core banking system, which would have then detected any unauthorized transaction? I mean, for the benefit of our viewers, what is SWIFT? Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication System. It's essentially a secured messaging service. So if that was being used to transact, should that not have been reconciled with the core banking system, which is the sort of fundamental system on which banking transaction happen in the country? Should that reconciliation not have happened, and any fraudulent transaction, should that not have then been detected?
No, you're absolutely right. And by the way, I think it's absolutely extraordinary that someone should be able to issue a SWIFT transaction by bypassing the core banking system. I find that extremely unusual, and I mean that is a glaring error. So the question is, were other SWIFT transactions from PNB going through by bypassing Finacle, or were they just happening, or was it just this particular officer who was able to bypass it? So that's question one. But your question in terms of reconciliations, of course they should be reconciled. And as I said, your Nostro account. A Nostro account is nothing but the account of your bank, so Nostro being our account, in another bank's, in a correspondent bank jurisdiction. And so when they are saying that this is 11,000 crores, essentially what it means is that 11,000 crores of Nostro accounts of PNB were not reconciled, which is completely extraordinary because it's a huge sum.
Right. Hemendra Hazari, does it sort of surprise you in one level, if assuming we're going to take facts at face value, assuming that there has been no political patronage, does it surprise you that two junior level sort of employees in a state-owned bank could pull off a loot of this magnitude of 11,000 crores over a period of 7 years? I mean, isn't that baffling?
No, it is baffling, but you see that there are certain very basic banking principles which seem to have been ignored here. Because normally a bank, employees in a bank, every 3 years they'll be transferred because they don't want to see any employee permanently in one critical post. Here it appears that this employee has been there from 2011 all the time, all the way till he retired in 2017, which is rather strange. It also appears that he was managing both the front office and the back office when it came to these transactions, or both the front office and back office were complicit. So there are some very basic banking principles that seem to have been totally violated, and this is what I find most astonishing, because Punjab National Bank is your second largest government bank next to SBI, and normally we regard its systems as being on the better side compared to the other smaller government banks. So it is rather strange that you have a junior employee who can just totally violate your systems. There is no supervision going on, there is no checker, marker going on, there is no audit of the branch going on, because all these very simple things could have detected this problem very easily.
Oh yes, absolutely. Important to mention here that there are 3 layers of security before any transaction or transfer happens, even through the SWIFT system. So I know people are blaming that this happened because it is through the SWIFT system. There are 3 layers of security and it has to be verified within the core banking system. So I somehow am not convinced that this is just the handiwork of 2 officials, mid-level or junior level officials of the PNB. They are soft targets. I'm sure they had a role to play. They perpetrated the scam, but it seems very hard to believe that it's just the handiwork of 2 officials. But Prashant Bhushan, I want to react to the points made by both the BJP and the Congress on the debate this evening, and the larger point that a lot of people are saying, that is it fair to hold the government accountable for a scam that has been perpetrated by a few employees, by a few fraudsters of a state-owned bank?
You see, the size and scale and nature of this fraud is such that it shows that the entire system of checks and balances, the entire system of regulation of banks, etc., seem to have collapsed and failed in this case. I mean, either there are high officials who are complicit with it, and not one, not two, but several high officials who were complicit with it, which would mean that they were probably acting perhaps at political direction or whatever, or that there is a complete collapse of the regulatory system. I mean, if this is the nature of the regulatory system that has been put in place in our public sector banks, etc., then heaven help us. Then that means that all our money in the banks can be defrauded, none of it is safe. If 11,000 crore fraud can be perpetrated by 2 junior employees, bypassing several layers of supposed regulation and supposed reconciliation, etc., and scrutiny, supervisory scrutiny, etc., that is there, then heaven help us. I mean, then God help us, because that means that we can just be looted of all our savings with these public sector banks in this manner. It's really very, very alarming. I mean, it's either something which shows a very, very alarming state of affairs.
Hitesh Jain, it's either a case of hopeless incompetence or a case of ugly corruption. I mean, it's got to be one of the two. Even let us assume that there is obviously, even if let us assume that all the points made by Priyanka Chaturvedi are, without any basis, that there is no corruption. Even if we were to grant that, can you concede that this reveals complete incompetence on the part of state-owned banks?
Well, 2 questions. There will be issues on the investigation will actually throw a light about the role of the banking officers and the banking regulator also. This will be a part of the investigation. But I want to ask one fundamental question over here. We have detected the fraud. We have taken an action. We have not slept. In 2013, when 13,000 fraud cases were admitted on the floor of the House, no action being taken. You are aware, just recently, like a week before, CIBIL notification has come that if there is an exposure of 5 crore, there is a reporting. If there is a default of 5 crore, there should be reporting. There should be prompt action. So you see the response of the government to deal with the NPA aspect, and to ensure that there is a transparency, and to ensure that the officers are not allowed to game the system, but they are required to report the system. So all these mechanisms have been put into the place. Tell me something, from 2004 to 2014, was there any such mechanism? So what is common in this fraud? This is again similar to 92 to 94. It reminds us the days of Harshad Mehta when the then Congress government was in power. So what is common in 92 is same thing reflected in 2011. No mechanism, no safeguards. You have seen a person from 2011 occupying the position in the bank and trying to game the system. Right from the system of whether it was appointment of chairman, appointment of senior officers in the bank, everything what the talk of in the biggest thing what was the talk of the town during 2004 to 2014 was this bank loot, allowing the bank loot, the officers being conniving,
say
their
something,
appointments
please?
and everything. Therefore, these issues will be an important part of the probe.
Okay. You know, before I go to Priyanka Chaturvedi,
you know,
Hitesh Jain, you
Congress,
could
it
get
is
away by
very
saying this in a lot of other
convenient.
channels,
They are
not
showing
on
one
ET
picture,
now. This did not get detected
No,
because the NDA government put in place great checks and balance. It got detected because the fraudulent officer retired, another officer came in place, and when these LOUs were being were being presented, he asked a few questions, asked for margin money, and that is what got exposed. It's not because there were any checks and balances. For all you know, if the officer didn't retire, this could have gone on for another 2 years. I mean, for the benefit of our viewers, I do want to place facts on record. But Priyanka Chaturvedi, quick rebuttal from you.
See, the only checks and balances and mechanisms that the BJP has put in place is to ensure that those who were part of this fraud were given the red carpet exit to go into countries where they did not have any jurisdiction in. We saw that happen in the case of Vijay Mallya. We are seeing that happen in this particular case. We saw that happen even in terms of Lalit Modi, where Lalit Modi was protected by the Ministry of External Affairs. So this is where they stand. When they talk about checks and balances, I would want to understand from Mr. Hitesh Jain, who's making a big thing out of, NPAs. My question to you is, please hear me out, Mr. Jain. I did not interrupt you even when you were making some statements which are patently false. My question here is, he talks about NPAs. I want to know what mechanism did they set in place to help Mr. Rishi Agarwal, ABG Shipyard, who was Mr. Modi's favorite blue-eyed boy, while Narendra Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, made fraudulent transactions with the bank and is now a Singaporean citizen. You know, this is my problem. I do not interrupt when he talks. And as soon as I start talking, they have a problem because they have a problem facing the truth. They do not have defense. They only have fraud. They have lies that they depend on to get away in these arguments and screaming their lungs out. My question is very simple. How did Rishi Agarwal become a Singaporean citizen after defrauding the banks under Mr. Modi's watch? ABG Shipyard, huge amount of scam which has been unearthed during Mr. Modi's tenure, is now a Singaporean citizen ever since the BJP came into power. How come Mr. Vijay Mallya continues to get bail in London courts? Because you have presented a defense which is extremely weak. I would want to understand from him what happened to the entire Adani scandal in Australia coal mining, where he got unauthorized, unsecured loan from SBI, because by the virtue of SBI chairman traveling along with Mr. Adani and in the Prime Minister's entourage.
These are
questions that Mr. Modi needs to answer, the Finance Ministry needs to answer.
Okay,
and
fair enough. But
most importantly, Mr. Modi, after getting a whistleblower's letter, not doing anything about it. So this raises questions on the mechanism system,
I hate to look in the rear view mirror.
Boasting about.
Okay, Priyanka, I hate to look in the rear view mirror, but how do the Mehtas of the Winston group get citizenship in St. Kitts, who are probably India's biggest defaulters, just because they don't have the lavish lifestyle of Vijay Mallya? The media didn't make them such a big case.
Absolutely.
How did, we don't need to go back and look at the letters written by Vijay Mallya to the Prime Minister, thanking him for the intervention of Mr. TK Nair in restructuring loans, or the intervention of top finance ministry officials and bureaucrats in getting loans of Vijay Mallya restructured. The point is, I don't think any political party can take the high moral ground when it comes to the banking system. Prashant Bhushan, I need to get a word in from you. Can any political party take the high moral ground on how how under their regime, that loans were given out in a fair, transparent manner without evidence of crony capitalism? Prashant Bhushan.
What is interesting is that you forget that these are very much the campaign promises in 2014 made by Mr. Narendra Modi. He spoke about more transparency, and people of the country feel disheartened simply because they believe that something that they had voted for they had voted for has failed to live up to those expectations.
I take that point, which is why we're asking the questions to BJP.
Not what happened. Listen, all this was discussed in 2014. You cannot keep throwing certainly to make this like a level playing field.
Priyanka.
Okay. Let Mr. Prashant Bhushan speak, please. Yes, Prashant Bhushan.
Yeah. So, the Congress cannot take the high moral ground on this at all. During the Congress and the UPA regime, a lot of these fraudulent loans were given out, including to Mr. Vijay Mallya, including to various other people. The Satyam fraud also took place during their watch. But nor can the BJP take any high moral ground, because one after another all kinds of skeletons are tumbling out of the BJP closet. And the unfortunate thing is that the Prime Minister has resorted to this sort of abusing and blaming the Congress for everything wrong that is happening under his watch. If this Nirav Modi takes these fraudulent loans of several thousand crores under Mr. Modi's watch, he will still blame, and the BJP spokesman will still blame the UPA for this. If Mr. Modi goes and gets the SBI chairman to sign a guarantee for Mr. Adani's loan, which all the Australian banks had refused to him, then also he will blame the Congress regime. I mean, I am reminded of this tweet that this History of India put out today, saying that this Mallya looted and flew away of the country, Lalit Modi looted and also flew out. Now Nirav Modi has looted and also flown out, but you blame Jawaharlal Nehru because he brought Air India to this country. I mean, is this the kind of absolutely asinine blame game that is going to be played by Mr. Modi and the BJP people? Of course we know that the UPA was corrupt. Everybody knows that the UPA and the Congress were corrupt. But is the BJP any less so? Have the NPAs been reducing during the NDA time, during Mr. Modi's watch? They have increased exponentially during his watch.
Hitesh Jain, quick rebuttal. Hitesh Jain, quick rebuttal.
You are a lawyer. Tell me something. In so many criminal cases, in one day 6,000 crore seized. Can you show me one instance? This is the intent. In one day 6,000 crore worth material has been showed. Show me a single instance happened in the past like this. When a fraud of this nature has been detected,
we'll have to wait and see whether it is all optics, whether it is all optics or whether it is actually money that has been seized. Hitesh Jain, I know this 6,000 crore siege is a good narrative for you to show to the media today, but we'll have to wait and see if it is all optics or whether this is actually 6,000 crores that is going to be.
Why not the 13,000 crores post demonetization?
The goods are before there on the camera. These are not optics.
Let me go to Meera Sanal. I don't want to make this an all political debate. Please indulge me. Let me go to Meera Sanal, because this issue, fraud, raises some systemic issues that need to worry all of us as citizens of this country. Meera Sanal, if two officials of one branch of India's second largest bank, a state-owned bank, could game the system, can we assume that this is commonly exploited? Could this be just the tip of the iceberg? Could this be happening in other state-owned banks? Dare I say in other private banks?
Well, of course, as I said, if you have collusion between two key officials, of course you can game the system, but which is why you have operational risks and controls. And so what this points out to is a systemic failure of governance at Punjab National Bank, and by the way also other banks, correspondent banks, because presumably, I mean, to build up to 11,000 crores, you have, repeated failures where the LCs are not being honored and you have to call on the guarantee. The heads of these banks meet each other all the time. Someone should have raised a red flag and said, what's happening with this customer? There's something wrong. This very public figures, very well-connected public figures. So this should have raised a red flag. And I think this really goes to the root of governance. I mean, we had a very, very well-documented PJ committee recommendation which said that there are governance failures in the public sector banks, where we've seen cronies using political influence and bureaucratic pressure on bank management to give loans, which is why we have such a large NPA problem. And we need to take governance steps. You need to provide more autonomy. You need to provide freedom to these boards to actually do the job that they are entitled to do, which has clearly not been happening. And I don't see any sign that this government is going to do that. So we are looking at the moment, a political blame game, but how are we going to resolve the issue? Because it's getting more and more horrifying as we go forward.
It is, and I hope we find some time in this debate to talk about what really needs to happen in terms of governance reforms, and this political blame game doesn't eat all the time. But quick word from you, Hemendra Hazari, which is whose liability is it? The RBI has indicated that PNB has to make good the loss, but what about the other, overseas arms of Indian banks who have also, in some sense, involved in this transaction? Because and there is a private bank as well. There are two other state-owned banks, including India's largest bank. It doesn't speak well of the Indian banking system whatsoever.
No, very true. Because according to me, if it is a letter of comfort which has been sent through the SWIFT, then the responsibility, the accountability, the liability rests with Punjab National Bank. Now, talking on governance, let me just tell you that the governance in the financial system, both globally, is terrible. Mainstream foreign banks have been rigging practically every market they operate in. Regulators have fined them for doing all kinds of obnoxious things, which to me, and these are not rogue employees, it is a very systemic, it is their very business model. And this is my great apprehension, because we believe that privatization, that the private sector is far superior in governance than, the government sector. But my own research into some of these new private sector banks, it shows there's complete misgovernance. You have supposedly independent directors, supposedly a well-constituted board, but they are all just, pygmies compared to the CEO, because the CEO controls everything there. And they are just willing to turn a Nelson's eye to all the kinds of misgovernance that you see. So this whole idea that, theoretically you can improve governance, if you see what's happening with the foreign banks, and these are all the mainstream banks, these are not banks from the Cayman Islands or from Liechtenstein, these are your mainstream banks. The kind of activities they do, it's all totally criminal. Sure. So this idea that by somehow you can improve governance in banks, and if you privatize them, you're going to get a far cleaner bank, I'm sorry, I really don't agree with it, because I've seen what these new private sector banks in India are currently doing.
Okay. I need to take a quick break, but quick word from Prashant Bhushan, which is, and I want you to comment on the point raised by Hitesh Jain a short while ago, which is saying that the government has recovered proceeds to the tune of 7,000 crore rupees, and we've seen some of those visuals, the ED, under pressure, obviously, cracking the whip, and we've seen some diamonds and whatnot. I'm trying to understand, can that all be proven that these are all proceeds of crime, and so can this money be used? What is the process? I mean, is it just optics, or do you think that this 7,000 crores can be used to offset the damage that PNB is going to face?
No, this figure of 7,000 crores being seized, etc., is just optics. It's complete bunkum. Nobody can in such a short time say that we have found these diamonds worth 7,000 crore. That is utterly absurd. It's an absurd claim being made. That will have to be evaluated. They would have to be eventually auctioned. Yes, if they are in fact assets of the persons who have been charged in these cases, they can indeed be seized eventually.
Complete your point, Prashant Bhushan, and then come to Hitesh and let him complete his point.
I am giving you, yes. Now, so far as the regulatory change that is required, one of the things that we have been asking for is transparency. We went through RTI to get the RBI to give us information about defaults, about details of NPAs, about this foreign currency derivative scam, etc. RBI refused. The Supreme Court thereafter directed them to provide this information, but they have still not provided that information in violation of the Supreme Court's order. For example, if all this information about these letters of comfort, etc., were put out in the public domain, at least the public would have known that this kind of thing has happened. Why is the RBI and why is the government interested in hiding all information about even frauds, defaults, about foreign currency derivative scam, etc.? Obviously, because the government is part and parcel of that scam. The Modi government is no different from the UPA government in this respect. They are part and parcel of all these banking scams that are taking place.
Okay, on that provocative note, we're going to slip into a short break. I'm really sorry for doing this to this wonderful panel. I'm going to be back in just a few minutes. We'll seek indulgence of all of you. When we come back, we'll debate the point that Priyanka Chaturvedi raised, which is how did he get away? How could he get away yet again? We've seen this happen in the case of Lalit Modi. We've seen this happen in the case of Vijay Mallya, and now in the case of Nirav Modi. How did he get away? We're back in a moment debating the big bank loot. On ET now, this is the India development debate. We are debating the big bank loot. Meera Sanyal, if PNB notified CBI in late January, what took the investigative agency so long to act?
Well, you know, without belaboring the point, let me just say that all our institutions have been grossly compromised, not just by this government, but by previous governments. Why does the CBI not act in time? Why does the Enforcement Directorate not act in time? These are extremely well-connected people, and you know, should the law enforcement agencies wish to act, they could well act in time, not just in this case, but in many other cases. So really what we're talking about here is not just governance of banks, it's governance of the whole law and order situation and of the justice system. Why do they not act? Well, clearly Nirav Modi is very, very well connected, both to very prominent industrialists and politically. So I think the answer speaks for itself.
Is it because Nirav Modi is well connected to prominent industrialists and of course to political leaders that he got away, Hitesh Jain?
Well, the PNB chairman has clearly made a statement that this is a fraud starting from 2011. I don't think he has been let away. In fact, on 29th, an FIR was registered on the information that was received from Punjab National Bank, and as soon as the information was received, action was taken immediately thereafter. So it is not something, and when we are talking about 2015 DRI, that action was also taken after the NDA government came into the place, and when they were looking into the very fact that which everyone is ignoring, including Mr. Bhushan, he can conveniently ignore, there is an institution called CIBIL. Now, when all the banks have been directed that if there is an exposure above 5 crore, they should immediately report. Not only the default they have to report, but even if there is an exposure or some entity is having a loan outstanding more than 5 crore. So with all this mechanism put into the place, the transparency, you want the data, you can get the data from the CIBIL, which is available on the website of the CIBIL. So when all these actions are saying what has happened, in fact, the cases are being detected. Is it our crime that we are detecting the cases, we are taking the actions, filing the FIRs, seizing the goods, start launching the prosecution, or the offense is the people who allowed them to commit the fraud? I'm surprised why. Meera Sanyal is also an AAP candidate. She was representing Aam Aadmi Party, so she is not in a complete sense unbiased. She is not giving an unbiased view. So she has her own views. But the fact is, if you will ask any objective person from a neutral standpoint, they will say that this government is really acting and clearing the NPA mess. For the Congress, it is their convenience. For them, for their survival, they have to make the allegations. Good luck to them. But they also cannot ignore the fact that their leaders were seen in all the bashes of Mehul Choksi. 5 ministers, 1 chief minister, everybody attending the bash of Mehul Choksi. So we are not getting into, including Rahul Gandhi, who was present at the Imperial Hotel of Nirav Modi's party at the Imperial Hotel. So this is the connection which Nirav Modi has. We are not getting into this. We are committed. We have to take the actions. We have put the measures for the transparency. You made this profound statement
that you detected the fraud, that you've recovered 7,000 crores, that you have filed an FIR. So what? Where is we asked this question? Where is Lalit Modi? Now we'll ask where is Nirav Modi? That has only changed. Lalit becomes Nirav. Priyanka Chaturvedi, quick response from you before I go to Hemendra Hazari.
No, I think the only unbiased person and the most honest, most transparent argument is coming from the Bharatiya Janata Party, and he has self-certified that. Nobody else has been given a chance to rebut his argument because he thinks everyone is biased on this show. Of course we are biased. We are biased about the common interest of the common man today. We are biased simply because we see that these kind of frauds are going to lead to more cess taxes being charged on us, more such FRDI bills being introduced, which will take away the powers that the common man have, and the banks will keep getting away with these kind of frauds. Yes, we are concerned, and we will raise this argument time and time again. I just want to understand from... No, I don't know why you jump so much. Why do you jump so much at the as soon as I start talking?
Yeah. Let her complete. I'm going to come back to you.
Why are you so rattled, Mr. Jain? Why are you so rattled, Mr. Jain?
Go on, Priyanka.
You are rattled because you are accomplices in this
12,000 fraud cases.
Because the Bharatiya Janata Party continues catering to the likes of Vijay Mallya and to the likes of Nirav Modi, to the likes of Rishi Agarwal, to the likes of Adani, to the likes of many such people who have been the beneficiary of the largest of the Bharatiya Janata
respond
Party,
as rattled.
because it has benefited your party politically. Why are you interrupting? Why are you interrupting? You wouldn't have interrupted if you were not rattled, sir, because I did not interrupt
the
you.
only answer
You are getting exposed for what you stand for. You get exposed. You stand exposed.
I can't go on with this. I can't go on with this. I have other panelists. Hitesh, this is not how we do debates on this channel.
Not living up to the promises of the people of this country.
Okay.
Absolutely. This is ridiculous, and I'm extremely disheartened that an argument has led to something like this, and I have not been allowed to speak time and time again by the BJP spokesperson. This should go on record of ET now. That is this the kind of panelists you want to bring into your show and reduce the quality of your discussions?
Complete your point, Priyanka. It's okay.
That as soon as I start talking, he has to interrupt.
Yeah, he's not going to interrupt. Finish your point.
No, I have no further points to make. I think this should go on record, and you'll need to understand. You'll need to understand that I cannot argue with people who have absolutely no facts in place, who will keep screaming their lungs out as soon as something else is presented in front of them. A counter argument is presented to them.
Okay,
Now, I just want to know from Mr. Modi, what are the transparency measures that he has brought into place? The only transparency measures that we have seen in place are people, the likes of Lalit Modi, Vijay Mallya, and many such people just getting away scot-free. And you know, you coming up with this defense of some person was senior, some person was seen there at a social event has no ground, simply because you'll have taken him to an important forum since 2016, World Economic Forum, and you'll have showcased him as one of the leading businessmen that the country has to show, and one of the leading businessmen who the foreign countries should be investing in. So please cut that nonsense, because you all are the ones in power. You all have showcased him as the top businessman of this country.
Okay, 30 seconds, Hitesh Jain. I'm going to let you respond, and then I'll go back to Hemendra Zari. 30 seconds, Hitesh Jain.
He keeps responding while I'm talking, and yet he gets 30 seconds to respond. It's
Priyanka,
amazing.
I've given you your fair share of time. Let him respond for 30 seconds, and then I'm going back to our other experts. Hitesh Jain, quickly.
Sure, I will keep interrupting him just like he was interrupting me. Is this the kind of debate you wish to have?
Of course not, Priyanka. Hitesh Jain, quickly make your point.
No, if you cannot respect our
okay, I think we've lost the line. I think we've lost the link with Hitesh Jain. We'll try and patch him back. Priyanka, I'll let you make your point. In all fairness, I'll let you make your point. We've lost the link with Hitesh Jain. Let me go back to Hemendra Hazari and ask a slightly more fundamental question. I'm not sure if Priyanka alluded to this or not, but a question that a lot of people would be wondering, that what all this means is that it's the Aam Aadmi, it's the common taxpayer who needs to keep recapitalizing these incompetent, inefficient public sector banks. I mean, let's leave the argument of corruption aside. What this effectively means is that we need to keep recapitalizing these banks again and again. A 2 lakh crore recap package was announced by the government with much fanfare, which was financed by the taxpayer of this country. So we need to keep recapitalizing banks which have such poor standards of governance.
See, the argument that you make is commonly made today, but one forgets that if you look at globally, there are boom and bust cycles. Now, when there is a bust cycle, you have found globally as well as in India, the big hit is felt by the banking sector. And even globally, it is the exchequer who comes out and bails out the banking sector. Now, mind you, globally also most of the big banks are private banks, but nevertheless, even then, it is the exchequer which bails out the banks. See, while I do agree that there is corruption, there is incompetence, but that is also there, in global banks abroad. But when you've had an economic slump, there is bound to be, poor quality assets are bound to surface. It is then the responsibility of the government, It is the responsibility of the exchequer to put their funds into the banking sector to recapitalize it. Because unlike banks abroad, India still remains a developing economy. You do not have a developed financial capital market, and therefore lending and financializing the economy is with the banking sector. So it is the duty of every citizen to see that the banking sector is sound, because this very idea that if you privatize the banks, all these issues are going to go away. What we have seen in the Lehman crisis is all these private banks abroad which did catastrophic kind of economic decisions. So please don't think that by having banking in the private sector, you're going to escape from all these type of illogical decisions. So when there is a bust, your banking sector is going to become insolvent, and it is the duty of the exchequer to bail it out.
Okay, you're making a strong case on why recapitalization needs to happen. I don't have a problem with recapitalization. My concern that I raised is because you recapitalize banks of such poor corporate governance quality. That was a larger point I'm trying to make. But Hitesh Jain, we lost the line with you. You were you're making a point based on what Priyanka Chaturvedi said. But I want to add this question on how long would we keep recapitalizing these inefficient state-run banks?
Well, I think, I've got nothing more than to add than to what the previous person says. Every situation will demand a situation. The government has clearly declared what they have done, but we have also gone one step ahead to ensure that there is no need to recapitalize in the future, so that to put the proper governance mechanism in the future, also to ensure that there is in terms of the exposure that is going on, prompt actions to be taken in the cases of default. So when you take the measured action after the recapitalization, then you can ensure that you don't need to recapitalize again. So we are putting an efficient system into the place, and structural reforms have been put into the place to ensure that in future you don't need to recapitalize.
But fair enough. I'm going to let Meera Sanyal have the last word. And Meera Sanyal, while the BJP has a lot of answering to do tonight, and they have sort of a lot of tough questions to answer, the fact of the matter is that they did not inherit the NPA crisis fundamentally, and at some level they have taken some steps to fix the NPA crisis, whether it was better recognition norms, whether the fact that they came up with the insolvency and bankruptcy code, yet they have deterred on governance reforms. They have deterred on moving in reforming public sector banks, the way they are governed, the way they are run, the checks and balances that need to be put in place. Why is that so, and is that the big disappointment?
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, this government came to power on the promise of less government, more governance. And I think across the board we have seen more government and less governance. In fairness, I think there have been excellent steps taken in the banking sector. As you mentioned, the bankruptcy code is a very good step. Some of the steps taken by the Reserve Bank of India just yesterday are actually very desirable. One of the most, I think, far-reaching things which has finally happened is they formed, the CRILC, which is the corporate database on terms of, of losses and bad debts. I think that's very necessary. It's something we've been crying out for a long time. If you and me can have our credit records as individual borrowers on the civil database, why can't these large borrowers, why can't that information be available to all? When there is more transparency, there is always less hanky-panky. So I think these are good steps, and I think the Ministry of Finance and the RBI need to be, credited for that. However, the real issue is one of governance. So long as you have the public sector banks dancing at the mercy of politicians and bureaucrats, these problems are not going to go away. And I think if the government is really serious about bringing in good governance in the banking sector, they need to create more autonomy in the public sector banks.
Oh, indeed. Couldn't agree more with you there. And, Hitesh Jain, that is as apolitical a statement as it can get. So I hope you're not now going to falter for having represented the AAP in the past. But I'm completely out of time. I have to thank this wonderful panel for this fiery debate. Priyanka Chaturvedi, always a pleasure having you with us here at ET. Now, Hitesh Jain, good to have you on the debate this evening as well. Himendra Hazari and Prashant Bhushan and Meera Sanyal, thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening. Political blame game won't reform India's ailing banks. Introspection will, and there is a lot that needs to happen. While some steps have been taken to fix the rot in the Indian banking system, a lot more needs to be done to govern, to improve the governance practices across the board, and to ensure that the banking system doesn't smack of crony capitalism that it has in the past, and that probably continues to. Thank you so much for being with us in this special edition of the India Development Debate. Up next is Top 10 at 10. Keep it with ET now. Good night.